My name is Bill Swatner, and I am a Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Certified Volunteer Master Gardener. This is a series of videos that go through the Texas Master Gardener Handbook or textbook. The reason behind it, as I've explained on the other videos, is this is a lot of material that we read and we don't know. I didn't know what I needed to know, what I should know, what I could really kind of put off till another time, or what I just need to read and kind of, okay, I read it. And so the point of this series of videos is to go through each chapter, and really I'm teaching myself, and I'm inviting you to sit up. Off these videos, none of them are encouraged, endorsed, or supported by any Master Gardener Association in any county, in any state. This is just me going through the chapters of the book. This is chapter 3, and it is on plant development, and this will come in 3 videos because if I did one video, it gets way too long. So the first video is going to be on basic plant development and the vegetative plant structure. The second video will be on the reproductive plant structure, and then the third video will be on it's on the hormones and the photosynthesis, transpiration, and respiration process. And there's some cool stuff in there I wanted to sort of explore, and so it's going to be a separate video. And then at the end of all 3 of them will be a what difference does it make? Why is it important that I know this? And connecting the dots between the chapters and how all this sort of fits together. So, chapter 3, the first part on plant development and vegetative structure plants. The book says there are gymnosperms and there are angiosperms. Those are Greek compound words. The word sperm means seed. Gymno means naked. It is a naked seed. And here you see the naked seeds. The seeds are exposed. They have needle-like leaves. They have cones. They do not have fruits or flowers. And examples would be cedar, juniper, and cypress trees. The book just mentioned it, so we're not going to spend any time on it. The book spends most of its time on angiosperms. Angio means enclosed in a vessel-like type thing, and sperm is the seed. So the seed is enclosed in a vessel, like a fruit or a flower. And these are your flowering plants. You have the flowers are formed, the flowers are pollinated, and then some become fruits and some become flowers. So we're going to look at angiosperms. All right, there are monocots and dicots. It means monocotyledon and dicotyledon. That's sort of important to know. If you want to know more about cotyledons, you can look it up in the textbook. Monocots have parallel plant. But think of grass. I'm thinking of St. Augustine, the parallel leaves in it. And if they have floral parts, think of them, they come in groups of 3. Then there are the dicots. The dicots have a netted vein. So here you see the veins coming off, the netted-like veins. And their floral parts do not come in groups of 3. They come in groups of 4 and 5. But for my thinking, monocots, parallel veins, groups of 3. Dicots have netted veins, and they're not in groups of 3. For me, it's for right now, and that's fine with me. All right, so we have angiosperms, monocots, and dicots. Each one of those 2 can be classified by their life cycle. An annual will go from seed to flower to seed in 1 year. A biennial takes 2 years, and then a perennial takes a period of years. Officially, there are 2 categories of perennials. There are herbaceous and there are woody. And then there's a third category, which I call confusing. It's not in the book. According to the book, perennials are classified as herbaceous if the top dies back to the ground each winter and new stems grow from the roots each spring. If the top persists through the winter, as of shrubs or trees, the perennials are classified as woody. So herbaceous perennials, and I'm thinking of Turk's cap, they die back every year and their stems are somewhat pliable, they're bendable. But woody perennials do not die back every year, and their stems have more lignin in them. They're more wood-like. That's why they're called woody perennials. And then you have what I call the confusing perennials. For example, lantana is classified as a woody because its branches and stems are wood-like, and they have a lot of lignin, L-I-G-N-I-N, in them. But a lantana freezes back every year. Conversely, lyrope are herbaceous perennials, and they do not freeze back every year. So the two official classifications are herbaceous and woody. Each one of them have certain traits, but there are always exceptions to the rule, lantana and lyrope being two of them. If you're wondering why they're called herbaceous, herbaceous comes from the Latin word herba, which is grass or herb. And grasses and herbs are perennials that have soft, non-woody stems. So perennials that have soft, non-woody stems are named after herba or herbaceous. All right, so let's go back to monocots and dicots. Look at some flowers and see if we can identify if they're monocots or dicots by counting their flower parts. So here are some flowering spots. Let me see if we can count them here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would make it a monocot. Next example, 1, 2, 3. Groups of 3. That is a monocot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a group of 3. That's a monocot. I have a lot of monocots. I don't know. Let's try this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is not in a group of 3. If it's not in a group of 3, it's a dicot. I'm going to try to count this one. These guys are a little on the small side. Let me see here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 flowering parts. That is not groups of 3. So since it's not group of 3, it's a dicot. All right, plant structure, and this is where it starts to really get into the meat of things. And I'm going to go slowly, and we're going to take a look at each one of these. So the plant structure, there are 2 types of plant structure: vegetative, which we'll look at in this video; reproductive, which we'll look at in the next video. In the vegetative, you have roots, you have stems, and you have buds. Roots. Roots absorb and store nutrients. Roots absorb water, and roots anchor the plant. And here in this diagram or this image, you see there are the roots. All right, stems. Stems support the plant as it comes out of the ground, whether it's the fruit or the flower or the nodes or whatever. It provides the vehicle for the flow of water and nutrients, and it provides the nodes from which leaves and or flowers or fruit will develop. So then we have buds. Buds or shoots. Some people say shoots and roots. This is part of the shoots. The bud will produce either a flower or a leaf. The flowers we will discuss in the next video. The leaves we're going to look at in this video. And then there are the 2 parts are vegetative, roots, stems, and buds, and then there's a sexual. So the 2 types of plant structure right here, vegetative, reproductive. We're looking at vegetative only. The sexual we'll look at next time. Well, let me back up a step. All right, so here you will see here's your stem. Here are your buds. Here are the stems that produces the leaves. And this little area right here is going to be called a petiole. We'll get to that in a minute. All right, now let's move on. All right, in vegetative, and this is important to know, in vegetative there are 2 types of root systems mentioned in the book. One is a taproot and one is a fibrous root. And the success or failure of either the taproot or the fibrous root will be the quality of the soil, and that's a separate presentation. Taproots have 1 root coming down and lateral roots coming off of it. The fibrous roots have a variety, have a multiplicity of roots coming down. And here's a picture of what I'm talking about. Here's your taproot system, that one root going up and down, and from it come lateral roots. The other type of root system is a fibrous root system. So here you see all these little fibers coming down. And so we have taproot systems and fibrous root systems. And in the third video, why do I need to know that? I'll tell you why. It's sort of important to know that. All right, so we have taproots and fibrous roots. There are three parts of a root system. One is the meristem. The meristem is the very tip of the root as it pushes through the soil, and that's where cells are manufactured. Right below it, right above it, you have the cell of elongation. It absorbs water, food, and they swell up, and they grow the width, and they force the width of the root, and it forces the meristem to go deeper into the soil. And then there's the maturation zone, which is the outermost layer of cells on a root. And inside the epidermis is going to be a cortex, where water moves in and out from the epidermis to where the food is stored. And you have the vascular tissue, which moves water and nutrients up and down the stem of the plant. So here is a picture. If you're paying attention, you know this is a taproot. It has that one root coming down here. Here's your meristematic zone right here. Here is your zone of elongation, and I change colors. And here is your zone of maturation. So this area here pushes through the soil. This area here swells up and makes the root thicker, and it helps force the root cap through the soil. And here is where all the different lateral roots are that absorb nutrients and water. So we have roots. We have the stem coming out of the plant. The stem physically supports the plant, the leaves, the flowers, and the fruit. Inside the stem is a xylem. Xylem transports water up from the roots to the shoots. Then also inside the stem is phloem. Phloem that should be plant sugars. Plant transports plant sugars up and down from the shoots down to the roots, back to the shoots, and then there's phloem, which transports water from the roots to the water and nutrients from the roots to the shoots to the roots to the shoots. Xylem goes one way, phloem will go up and down. And then there are nodes. The nodes are the points of the stem where buds will develop either leaves or flowers or fruit. This is a picture, a cross-section, illustration of a dicot. Remember, dicot comes in groups of 4 or 5 and has netted-like veins. And here you can see what the xylem of phloem looks like. Here's a cross-section of a monocot. See, it's structured differently. This will make a difference in the third video. All right, so there are different types of stems. Right now, we're just going to focus on one, stolons. Well, two, stolons and rhizomes. Stolons are on top of the surface of the ground. Rhizomes are in the ground. The reason that's important is St. Augustine grass has stolons. They're on top of the soil. And the more we walk on that soil, the more we crush that vascular system. And so St. Augustine dies with that little path going through where we always walk, or the dog always walks. Bermuda grass grows rhizomes into the soil, so you don't step on the vascular system. It's protected, but if the roots can go deeply enough that you can't get rid of a Bermuda grass sometimes. The rest of these things you can look up in the book. All right, so we did the roots. There are tap and there are fibrous. We did the stem, which supports the plant. The xylem goes up, phloem goes up and down, and provides buds. And from the buds, we have either leaves or flowers. Buds might be weather sensitive. There are leaf buds, which we'll look at in this video. There are flower buds, which we'll look at in our next video. An interesting thing is a terminal bud and the hormone auxin. Terminal bud is at the end of the stem, and I'll talk to you more about that in a minute. And then there are lateral buds at the side of the stem. So let's look quickly at buds and weather sensitivity. Buds are sensitive to sudden temperature change. It might be frost. It could be an early season frost or a late freezing frost. Buds are sensitive to strong winds. In our part of the country, it's blowing out of the northwest in the wintertime. Or heavy rain. Just too much, we need rain, and just too much rain can cause buds to rot. So buds are weather sensitive, and that's important to know. All right, so here is the fascinating thing. The last 2 points I showed you here, the terminal and lateral. This really is fascinating. The terminal bud right here is on the tip of the twig. It controls all growth on that twig. The twig will develop minimal lateral roots once coming from the side because all the energy is focused right here on the terminal bud. Now, and so here are your nodes, and here it is, some more nodes, and we'll talk about more of that in chapter 4 on propagation. So here is the fascinating thing. If you cut this terminal bud off, there's a hormone in there. It's called auxin, A-U-X-I-N. It's a natural hormone within plants that when that terminal bud is cut off, auxin is going to rush to put out replacements. And so now that this is gone, you'll start having more lateral buds. This thing is called apical dominance. Let me see if I can spell it on this pad. A-P-I-C-A-L. Apical dominance. When this is intact, it dominates the rest of the twig. When you cut it off, that dominance is gone and auxin rushes to all the openings on the twig it finds because it needs to replace this. And so all of a sudden you have all this growth. And the best example I can give you is crepe myrtles. You have perfectly good crepe myrtle branches that somebody, for whatever reason, thinks it's a good idea, which it's not, to cut off the branches. And what you have is a bunch of weaker branches come out. Well, those branches come out because the terminal bud has been removed, and auxin is trying to replace it, and you have all these other limbs come up. All right, so we did the roots. They absorb water, nutrients. They stabilize the plant. Stems provide support for the plant. Xylem, water goes up. Phloem, nutrients, water go up and down. And nodes, we talked about nodes, and here is part of it. Nodes provide either flowers or leaves. We're looking at leaves. Leaves absorb sunlight and manufacture plant sugars called photosynthesis. We'll take a closer look in the third video because it is a fascinating process. There's a petiole. A petiole attaches the leaf to the node. I'll show you the picture in a minute. There's an epidermis. If you remember, we had an epidermis on the roots. Now we have epidermis on the leaves. I'll show you that in a little bit. But what it does is it protects the leaf. And interestingly enough, there's a cuticle that protects the epidermis. What's fascinating is on the bottom side, the underside of the leaf, there are guard cells. Now what these guard cells do is they regulate the flow of water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide in and out of the leaf. When the plant is under stress, the guard cells close to save the plant. When the weather is it's milder, the guard cells open and they allow for this exchange of water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide. So here we go. Here is your petiole that I talked. It connects the leaf to the stem. Here's the epidermis. It's this green layer right in here. And that protects the cell. But there's a cuticle, that little layer on top, that protects the epidermis. This is important, and I'll tell you why in video 3. This is sort of a prequel or something. Then you have your mesophilic layer, and that's where photosynthesis takes place. And here are your guard cells. Fascinating that the under part of the leaf, it's on the underside of the leaf. They open up in mild weather and they close when the plant is under duress. So you have the epidermis that protects the leaf from water loss, infection, and injury. And the mesophilic layer is where photosynthesis takes place. So let's take a quick review. This again, my brain needs redundancy. There are two types of plant structure: vegetative, which we looked at today; reproductive, which we'll look at in the next video. Vegetative have roots. Roots anchor the plant. They absorb water and they absorb nutrients. Then you have the stem. The stem supports the plant. It provides for the flow up and down of water and nutrients, and it provides nodes for growth. And then you have the buds. The buds are either going to become leaves or they're going to become flowers. When they become leaves, there is an epidermis which protects the flower. You have an epidermis which protects the leaf, and then you have the mesophilic level, which is where photosynthesis takes place, and that's where the plant gets its life from. So there you have the first part of chapter 3. Gymnosperms, angiosperms. The book spends no time on gymnosperms. Angiosperms, we have monocots, dicots. We have annuals, biennials, and perennials. Perennials are divided into herbaceous and woody. That is the plants. Then you have the vegetative structure where we talked about the roots, the stems, and the shoots. I hope this helps. If you haven't read the chapter, maybe it helped put things into perspective on things I think are important. If you haven't read the chapter and you're like me and you're totally confused, I think I highlighted what I have experienced in my time as a master gardener are things I needed to know. I hope this helps.